Hello again. In this video, I want to have another look at using CSS scope variables. Now, I already did a similar video where we used CSS scope variables to change the text colors in specific parts of our web page. And I will link that video at the end of this one and down in the description. But today I want to have a look at declaring our variables inline and what kind of possibilities that gives us. So let's have a look. So in our HTML, we have this unordered list. And with some basic stylings, we get this 9x9 grid. But it looks kind of boring, so we may want to add a little animation to it. So let's add some keyframes. And we animate from 0 opacity to full opacity in a scale of 1.5 to a scale of 1. And then we can add that animation to our LIs by giving an animation name of show, which is the same name as the keyframes. Give it a duration of 0.5 seconds and an animation delay of 0 seconds. And that will add this animation to our grid. But it's still kind of boring, so let's say we want to stagger that animation. So we could start by giving each item a small delay of, let's say, 0.1 seconds. But that will give each item the same delay, and that's not what we want. Now we could give each item its own delay by using the end of type selector. And that will do the job. But as you can see, this gets quite messy, and it's also not very dynamic, but we'll get to that later. By the way, if you want to know more about these pseudo-selectors, I have a dedicated video on that, which I will link at the end of this one and down in the description. But let's get rid of them now, because this is kind of a nightmare. Let's try this by setting the delay with a CSS variable. So now the value is the variable delay with a default value of 0 seconds. That will still give us the same result, but now we have this variable to play with. Now we can change our HTML to declare that variable for each item individually. That will give us this staggered effect with a lot less code. We could do something similar for the background color. Here we set the background color to use the Hsl function. We use the variable u for the u value, set its default value to 0, which is red. If you're not sure on how to use the Hsl function, I have a dedicated video on that too, which I will link in the description. And again, because we have this u variable, we can change our HTML again to set that u individually for each item. That will give us this rainbow effect. Now, this is still a pretty basic example, but it does open up a lot of creative possibilities. The only thing is that it's pretty tedious to create all these variables manually. So let's fix that. A more practical application would be to create these items dynamically. So here we have a very basic React application. Creates an array of 7 empty items and then loops over these items and creates an li for each of them. It also adds an inline style where we declare a variable I and we set it equal to the index. And that will create this list. And for each item, the I variable will have its own incrementing value. And we can then use that value in our CSS, where we have that same animation and we use the I variable for the delay. But in this case, the I variable doesn't have any effect and the animation stays the same for each item. Why? Well, in our React code, we set the I variable equal to the index, which is an integer. It doesn't have a useful unit like seconds in this case. But we can change that by using the calc function and multiplying our value times 0.1 seconds. That will give each its own delay. And again, we can do the same thing for the background color. But in this case, the U value only increases by 1 for each item. And that will give us this very faint gradient. So we can also use calc here, multiply by something like 40. And that will again give us this rainbow. We refresh, we should have and the animation and the rainbow colors. Now I am sure you can come up with more creative things than creating moving rainbows, but at least now you have scope variables in your tool belt. And if you have questions about any of this, please leave a comment down below and I'll get back to you. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Bye. That will animate delay of 1.0. that will give us this and we can take a similar I can't. If you're not sure on how to use the HSL function, but it does open up a lot of creativity.